Councillors, comments? Councillor Lee.
Thank you very much. Just to go back to the beginning, you referred to a memo to the Auckland Transport Board in February 2015. Are you aware that the resolution which authorised your report was based on a separate memo to the Mayor and the councillors? You don't seem to mention that because it is quite significant, of 7th of May 2015. The memo to the board was a confidential memo, but the one to the council which authorised your report was not. So, and that was dated 7th of May 2015. There are some slight differences between the two memos, but it's interesting that you focused on the one to the Auckland Transport Board. That didn't authorise your investigation at all. I'll just make that point. When you say you talk about fares, are you talking about fares? You're saying the fares in Auckland are lower. Are you talking about fares received or ticket prices?
Talking about the fares received.
Okay, well, that's the whole problem. We were aware of that. So there's a kind of a tautology there on the basis of investigating why fares are lower, that come up with a finding that fares are lower.
Well, the fares are lower because the same structure delivers a lower fare. People take shorter journeys and you charge them a lower fare for it. That's essentially the difference.
You're saying that the fare structure is similar, and I guess when it comes to the ticket prices, the few cents depending on the sections. But the fares received are lower.
The fare structure is the same. The fares received are lower because same structure.
That's our problem.
The same structure delivers a different fare outcome in Wellington and Auckland because you've got a floor in the Wellington. But you've got a minimum fare of $5.50, which is the main difference.
You talk about the cost differences are modest between the two operations. I don't want to get picky about figures, but on your page 135 in the agenda report, 9 on your, you've got a table, a helpful table of figures set out there, and you give the Auckland total operational expenditure is 125.669 million. And you've explained how you've worked that through, but of course in the Auckland Transport rail operations for the 12 months ended 30th of June 2014, we have 139.285 million. I don't want to go into that, but I'll just make that point. I'll just come back to your figures, because you seem to have brushed over it, because we're looking for something that's significant here. I guess that's the motivation. The disparity in cost and revenue is so significant that the council, unanimously led by the Mayor, felt there needed to be some sort of investigation. But let's look at a significant difference that you seem to have brushed over. Labour. Auckland 43.216 million, Labour Wellington 25.436 million. Can you just explain that a little bit more? Can I ask you, are you including Transdev's admin costs and profit on that? And could you tell us how many staff are working, RMTU staff or train staff are working in Wellington, and how many are working in Auckland, to give us a handle on why there is such a major difference? That is significant.
Yeah, I think all those points are dealt with in the report, but I'm happy to elaborate on them. The first one, the difference between the 125,669 and the 139, if you look at page 16, you'll see that 139 is the number I started with, and the difference is 13.6 of financing costs, which were of a capital nature in Auckland, not in Wellington. So the 125,669 versus 85,090 is net of those capital costs. so comparing like with like. But that number itself has been dealt with on page 16 as one of the adjustments. And the difference between the mayoral numbers and the numbers...
So you say the
in
maintenance costs are not included in Wellington's operational costs?
No, it's not a maintenance cost, it's an interest cost. So the interest cost of 13.6, because Wellington and Auckland funded its trains differently.
That's how it's accounted for, right? It's accounted for by Auckland Transport as their operational costs.
Yes.
And you are aware that half of that 13.6 earns a subsidy, income subsidy from NZTA of that interest cost.
Yeah, but the whole point of this exercise was to compare like with like. And if you're comparing interest costs and capital costs in Auckland numbers and not in Wellington numbers, you're not comparing OPEX with OPEX, you're comparing OPEX with CAPEX. There are a number of accounting differences, and part of what this exercise was to do was to unpick those. And because there was a limit to how much we could ask Wellington to do, we had to work with their numbers and get the Auckland numbers to match.
That would there be a recommendation from you that in future, that in terms of attributing operational costs, Auckland Transport should not include that in their OPEX costs and attribute it like Wellington does?
You can include whatever you like. It only becomes an issue if you try and compare it with something else.
Oh, it is an issue, isn't it?
Yeah, it's included in your operational costs. It doesn't. It's
operational. It's not operational. We need to be clear about that, don't we?
Well, it's kind of irrelevant.
Anyway, let's get on to the. It's not kind of irrelevant. Let's get on to the 20 million difference in labour that you brushed over. A lot of money. 20 million.
Yes, it is, yeah, and that's because you provide this. This is the whole point of the exercise. The very first point is what drives those costs is actually your provision of services. There are two reasons why you might have a different labour cost. One is you've got different labour practices, so you'd have more.
You're saying they're broadly similar?
No, I'm not saying they're broadly similar. What I'm saying is the reason there's a difference, which is the very first point, I think on page, the second bullet point on the third slide here, says the primary difference is because you provide more services. If you're going to provide services, you need someone to drive the train.
Rather than saying that the labour structure is similar, would you not agree that in Auckland, that in Wellington, which has more train staff than Auckland, interestingly enough, that staff is employed selling tickets and checking tickets, whereas in Auckland they're not? Would you say that's fair?
I'm sorry, the point is the Wellington have staff that sell tickets.
Yeah.
Yes, they do, yes.
Yeah.
And check tickets, and they have a train manager.
That is quite a significant difference in a way, isn't it?
Not really, yeah, people who sell tickets.
Wandering up and down, or anyway, leave that.
That was the point behind
You're saying broadly similar, but with all due respect,
Councillor
disagree.
Lee,
Where are we getting to with this?
I think, Councillor Lee, we've got the report.
Can I just ask a few more questions about revenue? Is that right? We'll leave costs.
Yes.
Move on to revenue. A significant difference there, 13 or so million for the same amount of passengers. You put it down to a lot of people travelling between Ridabart and Newmarket. And in terms of the hop card, have you interviewed train staff on this question at all?
No.
Okay. Are you aware that train staff complain about widespread practice of people hopping off at, say, Newmarket or some other station, tagging off and then hopping back on? It's called fare overriding, and the advent of the hop card, because there's only a limited amount of gates, makes that possible. Do you not consider that it is possible that the official journey time or low fares in Auckland could be distorted by those sorts of practices?
No.
You don't think they could?
No, and I'm happy to explain why. I was aware of this. It was raised by Transdev. Most of the revenue is actually driven by the commuter peak. And so to suggest that an entire train is going to empty onto the platform, everyone will tag off and get back on, would be the only way you'd materially affect that.
Not the entire train, but a significant amount of it goes on.
The trains only stop for a relatively short time, and if you can get a significant number of people off, tagged, and then back on, I'd be very surprised.
Okay, well, I have to take your word for it as opposed to train staff, but
I'm not saying, sorry, I didn't say it doesn't happen, I'm sure it does. People's ingenuity in finding ways to avoid fares in the absence of any penalty is significant.
You've talked about fare evasion, but the memorandum sent to the council and agreed to, or accepted by the council, didn't talk about evasion at all. It was only based on tickets sold. So tickets sold is how you estimate patronage and how you estimate revenue. It's all based on that. How many people are evading is not, I haven't raised, and I'm not entirely sure what scale of evasion there is. I mean, I hear reports. Are you aware? You've talked about evasion, you talked about joyriding, but it's not significant. They've got no money and so on. That would be, I don't know what you think about shoplifters, but leaving that aside, do you know what the scale of evasion is?
It's around 4 to 6%.
How much?
Around 4 to 6%. Auckland Transport did a report on it, which I wrote for them about 3 years ago.
4.6%?
Or between 4 and 6.
Between 4 and 6. Okay. We'll leave that to one side, but in terms, are you aware that when the staff that are detailed to check tickets, station blockaders or inspectors, which I think is a major part of the revenue difference, you've got people on trains who don't check tickets and then you pay extra to come and check tickets, but are you aware that when fare evaders are intercepted, the number is added to the patronage?
Yes, because I understand they're made to pay a penalty
So
fare.
that would be, so do you not think there is a disparity there between revenue and patronage? In other words, that's like a sales manager announcing that sales are up because he's edited the shoplifting.
Councillor Lee, I don't know whether it's fair to have a debate with Mr.
No.
Kello at this
I-
stage.
I have one more question.
I have other councillors who would like to make
Sure,
comments.
I'm just going to ask one
and
more
ask
question,
questions.
Madam Chair. In terms of this revenue disparity, are you aware of how many tickets are given out for very popular events like Auckland Nines, Bledisloe Cup, Cricket World Cup, Super 15 and so on? Are you aware that that's a significant amount of people travel on the trains for those events?
Yes, I did talk to Transdev and Auckland Transport about special events.
Okay. Are you aware how the fares for all those tickets are accounted?
They're accounted for within the ticket price, I understand.
Sorry?
They're accounted for as part of the ticket price of the event, as I understand.
Yes, but how is that money accounted when it's received as revenue? Are you aware of that?
I don't know, we didn't look into it because we looked at
I'll finish
the
there.
number of people
Because it's
travelling
not.
and it was relatively
Thank you.
small.
I think that's the main answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the report, Paul. It's very informative. More stops, more frequency, more expense. My question is about the fare and the fare changes. So you're basing your figures on a standard end of 2014. So the new fare structure that's coming in, is that going to, in your opinion, directly alter some of the differences?
I didn't actually cover that in the terms of reference, unfortunately, Councillor.
Outside your
It was outside of what I was asked to look at.
Okay. Because there are some considerable savings at the extremities of the services and slightly increased costs as you come in, so it may potentially change it. Auckland Transport may be able to inform us a bit more about that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I really welcome this piece of work. I think it's going to give, I'm disappointed Councillor Wood's not here today because I think it's going to actually give some comfort, given the level of investment that Auckland is making into rail. I think it's important that we have such a report, and I would like to congratulate Councillor Lee for giving some impetus to actually commissioning such a piece to give councillors that level of comfort. So we're indebted to him on that. I'd like to suggest, Madam Chair, that when come time for the recommendations, that this be referred to the Board of Auckland Transport, this report. And really just some of the work here and recommendations, I think, will be really important for the consideration by the Board of Auckland Transport. I've been concerned for a very long time that the issue of fare evasion is one that we need. I know we've done a lot of work on it, but we need to continue to do a very big deep dive into it. And it's not just for us, it's for central government as well. I happened to be in Europe a few years ago when a young man was identified as a fare evader, and he got a €500 fine on the spot. It was instant. There was absolutely no getting out of it. He was nabbed, and he was held until such time as that fine was paid. So I'm not suggesting that we go down the path of being too punitive, but the government has to come to the party with us on providing legislation to provide better for enforcement. But I think the other thing that it does identify, and again it's something that Councillor Lee has been advocating for a very long time, the importance of gates. You know, if we haven't got those gates, it is going to be very, very hard, and that is an investment that we do need to make. So, Madam Chair, I'm happy to move these recommendations if you're happy to add a C.
We have added a C.
Thank you very much.
When it comes up, thank you, Councillor Fletcher. And so it's been moved by Councillor Fletcher, seconded by...
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Taipari, and you're the next speaker.
Oh, that's actually what I was going to do, Madam Chair, after those
okay.
riveting questions earlier. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Sure. Just a couple of questions. First of all, just picking up on the question that Councillor Lee asked about the issue around revenue from concerts and the like. It would be useful to have an answer around that, because I would imagine it's a matter of some magnitude. The other issue that I'd like to have addressed is you've clearly identified that there are opportunities for some significant gains, and they also could be of a high magnitude. It would be useful to know what amounts we could be looking at there, so that as councillors we've got that information, because obviously that goes to our budget, and I don't know how much those gains have been indicated to us and factored in. So, just coming to the recommendations, Madam Chair, as much and all as we are obviously going to receive this report, on my part there are certainly some matters that I'd like to have some feedback on, and there may be other matters that councillors have raised. I don't know that Councillor Lee has really had everything he's concerned about answered. Are we in a position to have some further investigation or indication? It doesn't have to be particularly extensive, but it would be useful, because we've got some great baseline information here.
And I think you could bring that up with Auckland Transport at the CCO committee. Councillor Walker, that would be the place.
I'm not on the CCO committee. This is a
Well,
report.
any councillor can
This
go
is a
there.
report to this meeting. It goes to finance and performance. All the matters I've raised, particularly those that go to finance, I would suggest are very significant. They're of a high order of
Councillor
magnitude.
Walker, this is an independent review of the operating costs of comparison between Auckland and Wellington. There are some recommendations that we can take on board, and we will pass the report as asked by Councillor Fletcher to the board and management of Auckland Transport. Unfortunately, we've got a problem with the button, so I can't get the recommendations
So
up.
just-
It is in C.
Just with respect to that then, what will be the mechanism for our getting information back from Auckland Transport around some of the matters that are being raised here?
We can ask Auckland Transport to report back. Thank you. Mr Mayor.
Well, actually, I just want a brief comment, Madam Chair, rather than question.
That's okay.
Good. Okay, so in terms of the recommendations, thanks very much. It's a good comprehensive report, and very much appreciated to cover off a range of the issues that were raised, particularly towards the back end of the long-term plan, so very, very helpful. I think what you have done is reiterated or already affirmed what we know as a problem. First of all, with fair evasion, and secondly, the way in which, we deal with that issue of fair evasion. It's a matter that I raised with the board and the chair about a year ago, and it looks like we're actually heading down that direction, which is using the train managers as checkers for those who have paid or not paid. Until such time as the system is fully gated, quite frankly, it's the only way you can do it. So I'm pleased that you've acknowledged that, and I am really now looking forward to the Transport CCO really delivering around that and making the change necessary to give those guys the powers to actually do the checking. And then secondly, we have been talking about significant powers from parliamentary change for about 2.5, 3 years.
Oh, longer than that, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, well, as long as I can recall. Anyhow, way too long. And my understanding always was that it was pretty much a regulatory issue. We should have had this sorted a long time ago. So there are 2 points here that are really affirmed by your report, and that in itself is well worth the cost of it. So well done. And now we look to the board to actually deliver on some of these outcomes.
It's all board policy anyway, by
you.
coincidence.
Councillor Frum.
Thank you. This question may
Don't
be
mind
out of the
think alike.
scope